You're listening to a Countout Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Stardom Road as we continue down the anniversary road here on the show. This time, talking our favorite matches. But before I get going with my co-host, let me introduce my co-host, as always, Trent. Trent, how are we on this fine evening or afternoon for you?
I'm doing quite well because I've just watched 4 fantastic matches for this particular podcast. I like this whole concept that we're doing of, we need to do some research for these shows. So we're going to have to watch some of the best matches Stardom have put out and with some of the best wrestlers I've had in their company. It's such a difficult job, this.
Yeah, only matches we prefer, obviously. Like,
yes,
that's the beauty of this is we excuse me, we went through the whole field of anniversary matches. We said, yeah, these are the ones that we're watching. Now, I could have forced Mayu versus Momo upon Trent, but I didn't do that because there was just so many matches we weren't going to watch the whole field either. There are some that we didn't talk about that are great, but
yeah, this isn't going to be the best matches in the anniversary show's history. Yeah. These are just 4 matches that we picked that we think exemplify what the anniversary show is. And we tried to spread it out a bit so it wasn't all just one wrestler. One has managed to sneak into 3 different matches, but it's not our fault. It's their fault for being so good.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. It's like one of these matches for me personally is one of the greatest Stardom matches of all time. It's also the greatest of its match type that I've ever seen, and we'll get to that later on, which I'm so excited to talk about because that is fun story, which I'll get to later. But that is one of the matches I reference to people all the time who want to get into Stardom. Like, watch this because this gives you a little bit of everything. Thank you, Natsu, for being in that match. Without her, the drink doesn't stir perfectly in terms of getting a little.
She knows how to stir drinks.
Yes, exactly. That was my crappy joke that I'm happy you pointed out. But we're gonna get into it. But before we start, the person we, of course, we're talking about that appears in 3 of the 4 matches is none other than Yu Ashina, of course, better known to Stardom fans as Kagetsu. And we are going to, and we're saying this now, we are going to be referencing to him as Kagetsu because that is the wrestler, that is the persona that was the wrestler. I think Trent made a great point. It's kind of like how that was the role, that was the movie role, right? It goes the same, and we respect Yu Ashina and we love Yu Ashina for getting to be himself nowadays, and we're gonna do so many more episodes talking about Kagetsu, but we wanted to just put that out there now so that we want to respect him in all ways, and we want to, of course, respect what he did in the previous life, of course, as Kagetsu.
Yeah, look, for us, this is the equivalent of if we're talking about Elliot Page and we go back through his movie filmography. If we're talking about the movie Juno, Juno's the character that Elliot Page plays. Just like in this case, pro wrestling is always a little bit of a muddier situation because the wrestler can be so close to the performer that they're playing. But in this situation, we've both kind of agreed we want to reference Yu Ashina as Kagetsu because Kagetsu was the character that Yu plays in this situation. Yes. We fully acknowledge, respect, and love the fact that he is Yu Ashina. But for the sake of these situations, we're talking about Kagetsu, the wrestler.
Yeah, we're talking about if you want to talk about pillars or Mount Rushmores in the history of Stardom, Kagetsu is right there, if not on it. I know for you,
yes,
Kagetsu is on that list. So
yes, Ryan and I did an article where we debated the Mount Rushmore of Stardom. I had Kagetsu on that list, and I would fight quite fervently to keep Kagetsu on that list. We
did a all-time Stardom draft, and Kagetsu was top 3. Right?
Yes.
It was Mayu, Io, and Kagetsu, which I mean, and I know people that call Kagetsu the greatest of all time because it's not the favorite. Like, Kagetsu is his favorite wrestler of all time as well, so that plays to it. But you watch these matches back and you understand the brilliance that is Kagetsu as a wrestler, and I'm very excited to talk about it because we haven't got to talk about Kagetsu yet, which is
No, because we've covered mostly the very early stuff, and
Yeah.
then when we have covered the period that Kagetsu's wrestling
we
in,
zoomed.
it's more just covering like briefly. Oh, this was a match or two around this time. Look, obviously, we've mentioned we are going to be covering Kagetsu, multiple episodes dedicated just to the work there. Going to pop up a lot in here. If you can't wait for those Kagetsu-centric episodes, though, but you do want to learn more about Kagetsu, my recommendation, Super Eye Patch Wolf did a fantastic video on great heels in wrestling and covered Kagetsu for about, I think it's like 5-6 minute block in that period. It's a great way just to kind of get a brief snapshot of what Kagetsu brought to the company and how good Yu Ishino was as a performer.
Yeah, admittedly, we don't know when we'll be hitting the Kagetsu centric episodes or the Oedo Tai centric episodes, because we got a lot planned heading into at least to the end of May, which is very exciting. You know, I couldn't
Very
say
rare
that
for us.
I couldn't say that about a month ago when I was trying to tell you all what we were going to be talking about for that episode, but we're prepped and ready to go, and I think this episode, along with the next three, I'm really jazzed about. So, with all
I
that,
can't imagine why you're jazzed for the next 3 episodes.
the next 3 episodes are, the reason this podcast exists. True.
We'll let you know about that at the end of this episode.
Yeah,
you have to
now.
listen to this episode.
Half the reason I wanted Stardom Road to exist was that I could just go back and watch this wrestlers' matches again and again and again, which is something I already do anyway. So it's not crazy.
Now you've got a reason to go back and watch Shiki Shibusawa matches.
Yes, of course. But instead of pandering on, we'll get to it here. We're going to start at the 5th anniversary, January 17th, 2016. You may have heard of these two, Io Shirai versus KAIRI Hojo. Obviously a big match. World of Stardom Championship on the line. For those wondering, it's one of the highest rated Stardom matches of all time here on the Handy Dandy Cage match. But it's a major match because, one, I think this is the one Io Shirai KAIRI match you can't see on Stardom World. One major one,
yes,
I should say. Which is obviously a big deal. Because not only did I say it's one of the highest rated matches in Stardom's history, but it's 2/3 of Freedom, folks. Like this is the pinnacle. Not the step below the pinnacle because Mayu's not involved, but you get my point.
It's the Stardom rule that if you've got 2 out of the 3 members of the Freedom in a match, at least one has to be missing from Stardom World.
Yeah.
Because Mayu, Io Shirai, one of their matches is on there.
Mayu.
Yeah, it's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, those Io and Mayu ones kind of really need to be on there because I think that's the matches everyone goes to when they're trying to get into Stardom, more than any.
To me, they're the matches I recommend. It's a bit difficult now because Io Shirai hasn't been in Stardom for 5-6 years now. But yeah, it's kind of, if people want to know why I got into Stardom, it's like Io Shirai versus Mayu Iwatani. Just watch that trilogy.
Yeah. Io Shirai is the reason I got into it. Thanks for her coming to WWE, though I wish, technically that's the funny thing. I wish she never did, but maybe I'm not here if she didn't. So I'm grateful for that. She's one of my favorites.
I'm more than here to do a couple of Rush episodes on Io Shirai if she was to come back this year.
Yeah, if she comes back, we're gonna just we'll immediately be like, all right, let's just hit 5 episodes in a row. Bang, 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 bang for all of you. And it'll become a weekly episode all of a sudden, a weekly show all of a sudden because of that. But let's get to the match here, of course. This was in Cork and Hall, as you expect. We talked about all these shows over the last episode.
Yeah, a fortnight ago.
This was the ultimate aspect of what these anniversary shows were, and this match I think really showcases that more than any other. This is actually my first time seeing it because, again, I said I have never seen it because it wasn't on Stardom World, so I was very excited, obviously, because I've seen them wrestle. I'm not, I've seen them wrestle their other matches.
You're aware of their abilities.
Yeah, I'm aware of what they can do, and I'll admit I've always preferred this is shocking everyone I know, Mayu and Io. But
What?
this I think was my favorite of these two going head to head.
Mm.
The interesting thing, and I don't know about you, but the interesting thing with this match is I felt like I saw Io's formula in this match more than I usually notice, because people
Yeah.
talk about her formula all the time. I'm like, I don't know. I don't really notice it. This one, I was like, oh man, this is like down to a T of the Io Shirai formula, which is not a bad thing. The Io
No.
Shirai formula is a great formula. That's why she's one of the greats of all time.
Mm.
But this was like, all right, we're checking all the marks here, and it turned out to be an absolutely fantastic match.
I think a big part of this match feels like it's right around the time. This is Io's first defense in her second red belt reign. Just the month prior, she had defeated Miko Satomura to win the championship, the title that KAIRI had lost to Miko Satomura. So it's a roundabout way of why this match was happening. And this is right where Io's about to launch into her record-breaking reign. You know, when people talk about Io Shirai and what made her so good, it's this period. And so I think she's just starting to find what works for her, what has morphed her from being a high potential young athletic freak that she was in her first reign in her first few years wrestling to become one of the greatest of all time and probably the best women's wrestler in the world at this point in time. This match is kind of, yeah, as you said, it shows the formula, but it's where she's really starts to craft this, and not only the formula of what kind of match she puts on, but also the character, because around this time she does start to get a bit of an ego. You know, she starts to buy into the hype of her being a greatest of all time, the genius of the sky, and you see this at certain points in the match, that sort of cockiness, this arrogance that comes through, and then KAIRI is fighting against that. So in many ways this is the prototype, not necessarily the prototype, but the prototype match of the Io Shirai that everyone remembers in Stardom.
Yeah, that ego, I think, is what, sadly made her perfect to be one of the few that would be successful in WWE, if that makes sense. Because her character work with that ego is at times almost second to none in terms of like that heelish character. And I think that's a lot of the reason, for example, in real life, why Julia has become a favorite of so many. It's because she has that same ego and that same cockiness, and they're very different wrestlers, but that aspect is so similar, and it's worked for both of them. And with this match, it starts off like it just it's shot out of a cannon. They're slapping the taste out of each other's mouths, and you just sit there and like, this is how I felt. It was like, this is what you want to see out of Threedom when they're wrestling, right?
Yeah.
You want to see that physicality. It's kind of like my mentality now when I watch Stardom, is that I always say how stars, they wrestle each other. It's different from when they wrestle other people. When Threedom wrestles each other, it's different from when they wrestle the other people. The only person that, can, I think, ever reach this amount of physicality and this chemistry with them, and with Mayu, it's different because she's just been here the whole time.
Yeah.
But it'd probably be Kagetsu. Honestly, I think that's the which is funny for this episode because we're going to be talking about Kagetsu a lot. But that's the only other person I think that's willing to go in there and just match them in that level of physicality and authenticity. Even
yeah, and I mean it kind of makes sense because you look at the roster around this time. Obviously, the Threedom, they were established, they were set up. But then you sort of next generation, your Starlight Kids, Azumi, Momo, Watanabe, Jungle Kyona, they're all still coming up. Yeah, they've only just sort of joined the company. They're still finding their way. It would take a lot of gall to be able to try and step up and match their physicality. / they're just not in the position to. Kagetsu, he's a veteran, has sort of shown what they're capable of, and is not afraid to, because obviously when Io Shirai and KAIRI had left, Getsu took over as head trainer. That's the level that they are at. So you've got that trust, you've got that experience, because anyone can hit someone hard. it takes talent and experience to hit someone hard without injuring and damaging someone. So someone like the three of them, they can trust they have that experience with each other, Kagetsu as well. But if you want that kind of physicality in this point in time, you're looking at those four. Whereas this in 2023, you've got a lot more wrestlers feeling comfortable at just walloping each other, whether it's into faction or otherwise.
Yeah, and I think the fun of this match, right, when I talked about the Io Shirai formula for her big epic matches. One, they went long. That is one thing she did. She went to the buzzer more times than not. As close to the buzzer as possible, I should say. But one of my favorite things that she does in her matches is doing the traveling around Corkin specifically. And that was,
you want to talk about things that happen in every big Kurikan show, especially with Io Shirai. You got to go up to that sort of second level of the seats.
Yes, and I bring this one up because this one didn't go as it usually does. So usually, of course, Io Shirai is doing her beautiful moonsault off one of the balcony doorway things, and crashing onto a group of people. But this time, as she was ready to do it, KAIRI was nowhere to be found. And KAIRI fights her down, gets her down there, and she hits her diving elbow, taking everyone out, of course. Mostly just Io. That wasn't as
it's easy to hit that move on one person.
Exactly. But I thought that was great because it is the change up that you kind of want, because you get so used to seeing the Io moonsault from there that it's like, okay, let me see if someone was smart enough. And of course, it was KAIRI to do so.
It was interesting seeing that spot too, just because I've been recently rewatching the Meiko Satomura championship run with Stardom at the end of 2015. Yeah. And because again, they go up the top there. And one thing I really liked was in both of those sort of settings, KAIRI's jumped off that sort of part, but she's also done the 100-yard sprint into the spear. And it was kind of cool seeing how they each took that move differently, because it is kind of like a super variation of her move. And Meiko Satomura would always try and just endure the shot. And so just the way they take it and sell it is quite interesting, a point of comparison. And it's just, it's a really cool spot. I will admit, when you rewatch a lot of the title matches from around this era in short succession, going up to that period you kind of roll your eyes and go, here we go again. Because they don't really try and hide what they're doing. There's no punching up the stairs. It's just I'm going to grab you by the scruff of the neck and now we'll take a walk. But it is fun seeing how they mix things up there. Eventually Kagetsu and Mayu did the fun spots where they try and hang each other off the balcony. A nice switching of pace.
Yeah, I think, and like you said, when you watch a lot of these old matches, you do tend to notice that. And I think that's why I like the matches that we picked, because they do break away from that in some ways. Now, the other singles match we will discuss does go outside, but it's in a more violent way than rather the Io Shirai.
It's not in Kurikan Hall. They can't go up to the second level.
Right. Well, that too. But I kind of meant the main event. Let's travel around the ring and get the fans invested a little extra.
Scurrying in the case of the other match.
Right, and I think that's part of the game too. But this match was, you were talking about how they fought back and forth, and KAIRI goes for the long spear. She eats the post on the outside, which is just brutal. This was a struggle from start to finish. It was it's why this match went 29 minutes and 31 seconds. It was anyone's game until the very end. And one of my favorite moments from the match was when Io hit the 4 locomotive suplexes.
Yeah.
And I just sat there. I was like, I wonder why so many people like Suzu. I was just sitting there. I was like, there is a lot of similarities here as well. It's not just they wear the same colors and stuff, but it's they have some of the same moves, especially those suplexes. They have the same oomph on them that I think. And we'll get to that next match and how I will crack a joke about, you know what? I kind of understand why Kagetsu retired. But this match was just tremendous. And then Io Shirai hitting an insane elbow right? And
she was loving that around that period.
Yeah, a great one, by the way, for those who are wondering if someone could try to match KAIRI, not to the exact KAIRI level.
It's a valiant effort.
KAIRI gets a little more whip when she does hers. Just in like
I think
her
she
body.
cares less about her body. Just that landing, like
yeah.
Io, you can tell, is still trying to land well enough to not destroy herself.
Yeah,
which fair play. Like,
but it's great to see.
Why wouldn't you?
One of the things I always will love is like when they trade moves back and forth, especially when it's as close as these two are, that it works better. Because if you see like Julia and Micah do, it's great, or Julia and Shuri, of course, that's great. But if you see it's someone and someone else random, it's different. It's different. But this was a great touch, I thought. And then KAIRI hits her own insane elbow, great near fall, of course. I sat there, I was like, that's that kick out's kind of what I was hoping for Mayu at a historic crossover, which I think we got one.
Yeah, we did. We got one,
but I didn't get two. Which I didn't expect to get two, but I would have liked it. And then the match ended with the bridge suplex, which obviously Shane Bridge hitting a picture perfect moonsault for the win. One of her best moonsaults. I actually want to just say, like, this was one of her cleanest moonsaults, because when Io does her moonsault, she just goes. Like, there's no like, oh, let me double check back there, make sure.
If you're not in position and you eat it poorly, it's your own fault.
Yeah. Like, she just she bounces up there and she's hitting, she's going, and it's gonna come fast and it's gonna come impactful. But this was one of the more perfect looking ones, and I thought it was a great end to a great match. What I think is probably the best I've seen from these two.
Yeah, it's quintessential Io Shirai, it's quintessential Kairi Hojo. So if you're coming into Stardom, you're relatively new, and maybe these two from their WWE tenures, and you want to see what they were like when the hype was building for them. This is a perfect kind of dip your toe into the water and see what it's all about, because you get two for the price of one. The only downside, of course, is you can't dip your toe in on Stardom Road. You have to dip your toe into the seven seas. But it's the nature of the situation. Obviously, there are other matches there as well, but it is nice to sort of get them both in just as they're kind of hitting what I would say the peak period for the freedom in Stardom, especially Io Shirai, because as I said, this is right at the beginning of a historic reign. So if nothing else, it's worth watching to get some context for where it all began.
It's funny, though, which I did not expect to come out of these four matches saying this. This was my least favorite of the four.
It's funny you say that. I actually agree.
Okay, all right. So I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. Maybe it's I'm just so used to the EO formula, so it's like, all right, there's not creativity in that it ruins the match, right? Because it's these two, but it's like the other three, I mean, are just so much better in their own way that, and we'll get to it. But again, a tremendous match. If you can get yourself a link, check it out. That's part of the difficult game here. As we journey through Stardom's history, it's always fun to play the link game.
We always have to specify if this is a Stardom World link or a less white market link.
The good news for everybody is that the rest are Stardom World. So let's move forward here. January 21st, 2018. Stardom's 7th anniversary, of course, at Korakuen Hall. One of my favorite matches of all time, folks. Like, not just in Stardom, not like this is one of Stardom's greatest matches of all time. This is one of my favorite matches of all time. Like, if you were to ask me what would a 5-star Gauntlet match look like, it's this to a T. It is Queen's Quest versus Oedo tie, where the loser, who ultimately was pinned last, would be forced to leave the group. That was Kagetsu's idea, of course. Of course, that would be between Momo Watanabe and Tam Nakano. I mean, there is something about the energy to this match that I think and to play to and credit Io Shirai, I think some people may have thought I was ragging on our formula or something. With this match, she can't play to the formula because of how it's designed. and it benefits the match to a whole nother degree because one, everyone's randomized, so each order of how they come in is randomized, which of course
quote unquote randomized.
yeah, wink wink nudge nudge. But for the public, it is randomized. So when she steps into the ring, you hear the crowd roar a little bit. And it's just like, oh, here we go, right?
Yeah.
And that's a credit to who she is, of course, in her or around her. The way this match starts is beautiful. The way match ends is perfect. But before we get into it, what were your memories of the match? How do you feel about this match? Because I was very open about this. And I've been very open about this. The first time I ever saw it, I was like, this is the best Gauntlet match in history.
Yeah, so this is like probably a few months into me being a full-time Stardom fan. I got in through the Threedom, and when I first subscribed to Stardom World, I would always watch their big matches, but I wouldn't necessarily watch the whole show. But sort of as the golden era of Oedo Tai began, which is kind of the crew that you see in this match here, that's when I kind of started to go, hang on, I need to watch everything Stardom are doing and properly invest. And so I was fully invested as this sort of show was happening, as the story was unfolding, which I know the first time I was watching it, like I was just totally enraptured with it. I knew the result because it's Stardom. These matches go up after it's happened, and you kind of have to, especially back then, you had to wait a little bit longer. But I had to find out what happened. I had to know if Tam or Momo got kicked out of their group. So I have very fond memories of this. Like you, this is a match that I have recommended to people wanting to get into Stardom or are into Stardom and want to go deeper into it. What I love about this is when you recommend someone a match, you're kind of trying to tailor it to someone's interest and picking wrestlers you think they will like. This is kind of like recommending a show to someone because you get so many different combinations, so many different wrestlers involved, and it tells a story throughout the entire. The Stardom World stream of this is about an hour long, and it's telling a story throughout the entire period. It has ups and downs, different wrestlers doing different things. You get high speed, you get brutal, you get comedy, you get emotion. Like, it is a complete package of what pro wrestling can be in one match. And it kind of astounds me that we haven't had this kind of match replicated in future Stardom sort of stories, because they are so faction reliant, and they have liked to do these loser leaves a faction kind of story arcs before. I'm shocked they haven't used this formula and just stuck to the elimination tag, because they're great. But I feel like there's so much more storytelling you can tell in this formula. One person from each team in the ring, one gets eliminated, another person comes in. There's a lot of drama. You get heroes a bit more convincing. Like Kagetsu carries the team.
Oh my god!
If it wasn't for what Kagetsu did against Io and then Viper, takes out their two Queen's Quest two strongest members by themselves. Without that, it's no shot. You get that kind of heroic story arc. You get a whole bunch of different things. It is just a quintessential what wrestling can be as a story and as drama.
Yeah, I like how you say it's like a whole show. I usually go to 3, maybe 4 matches now, especially after the past couple of years. I've added another or 2 to, like, I think now I'd probably give Shuri and Julia from as another match to recommend. But I think like my top 4 is any Io Mayu match. Like truthfully, like any. Sometimes I usually just do the double title one because 1, it's on Stardom World, 2, it's meaningful for a number of reasons. So I usually lean on that one. This one always because you get a taste of what Stardom is in every single way, like I said earlier. And you get to see the best of the best throughout the match. The only person this match doesn't have, truthfully, is Mayu Iwatani. Like, that's in terms of like the where Stardom was at that time, that's all it's really missing. But it's okay because again, you get to see the future, the present, now the past, obviously, for those who watch the CEO and Kagetsu, of course.
That's the one difficult thing about this in recommending to people in 2023, because like you'd be like, oh, if you want to get an idea of what Stardom is, here's this match. And unfortunately, it's like, oh, can I see more Io matches at the moment? No, she's in WWE.
Yeah.
Can I see Kagetsu matches? No, they're retired. Natsu, oh no, she's in Noah apparently. Can I see more Hana matches? Unfortunately, it's really the only people have stuck around are Tam and Momo. Surprisingly, given that they're both the final two, and Hazuki
and Azumi, who's of course now
and
important.
Azumi,
which is why I kind of like to play with it, and that's why I always tell people to also with Stardom is to watch through people's careers, because especially, I think Momo is always a great example because she's still so young now. But this was when she was entering the mega run and where she was going, and Tam's so fun to see too, because it's like how different she is now. It almost makes me laugh in a lot of ways. But this is like one of her first great performances. Also,
I think it's her first great one, at least in Stardom, because she barely wrestled before she got injured, and then took time off, and then came back for this match. And her work outside of Stardom were. The deathmatch stuff was kind of fun.
I was gonna say it's the exploding, the big explosion with the bat. I always love to go back and watch the Arisa match, and then pretty much everything she's done since really taking over the Angels, especially. Pretty much everything is meaningful for her now.
And if it's not, she makes it meaningful.
That she does. But also, I think you hit it on the head with the drama, is that they never lost that feeling of drama throughout the match. Like from the get-go, you felt it. You felt the importance, which is hard to do, I think. That's why this match works over, for me, the Captain's Falls matches that they lean on more so now. And I hope someday they do go back to this. I understand you don't always want to, especially because these matches do take up time, but if you're going to main event a show with it, that's okay, right? And they don't do that anymore. But if remember when, for example, easily when Queen's Quest and Oedo Tai had the Captain's Fall match, and of course Momo would go on to turn, that would have been a perfect spot for it. And now with the story that where Momo ultimately turned, it's a little different, but it would have worked. It would have worked very well, or perfectly. But let's get into this match. This isn't about that now, but it's about then. And it starts off with Azumi and Chris Wolf.
Don't blink.
And within 8 seconds, Chris Wolf is eliminated. Azumi, does what Azumi does. Gets the big shock pin, and it's like one of those like, oh, we're in this. And that's where the drama it's all in from there.
It's fascinating because this whole match, like, Oedo Tai are the heels, and look, they're the fun, vagabond heels. They're not the decidedly evil heels that they are now, but like they are the underdogs throughout this entire series. They lose someone straight off the bat. Their second person is Natsu Samir, who isn't exactly a world beater. They're kind of hanging on from the beginning, and even though they're doing everything they can to essentially cheat and be heels, you can't help but feel kind of like you want to root for them over Queen's Quest, because they're the ones coming in with the heavy hitters. They've got Shirai, they've got Viper, Azumi, who wasn't a world beater at this stage, is dangerous. Momo Watanabe, who was right on the cusp of about to go on her world beating run, and you knew it at this stage when you were watching Stardom around this time. You knew Momo was about to launch off, and even Hazuki is someone who was sort of just waiting for the opportunity to step up another level. They had a strong squad compared to Oedo Tai.
Yeah, I think, and that's the funny thing. You bring up Hazuki, who was waiting for that opportunity, and of course, should go on to get it in Oedo Tai. And I think that's when, for a lot of people, maybe Oedo Tai reached the peak. I know with Hana, of course, but during that time where Kagetsu and Hazuki were really, pushing that group forward, that's of course I think when it was most popular.
Arguably the best in-ring period.
Yeah.
I'd say the golden era of this period was the most fun the group was. But when you had like the combo when you've got the combo of Kagetsu and Hazuki just wrecking everything, a lot of special stuff there.
Yeah, we'll get to them in a little bit. Natsu
Later on.
Sumire, Natsu was able to defeat Azumi in a good 5-minute stretch where, the funny thing with Natsu, right? And it's funny that she has become relevant again after taking so much time off, is that people do play to her comedic side a lot, and she plays to it obviously all the time. But she's a very solid wrestler. That's never been in doubt, and I think this 5 minutes with Azumi really spoke to that, because they kind of really started the match in a lot of ways. They started the feeling. Yes, Azumi pins Chris Wolf in 8 seconds, but after that, it's like, okay, now where are we going? And Oedo Tai, of course, down 1, has to kind of wrestle, not desperate, but all right, we need to get ahead of this, and Natsu's able to get that elimination that they very much needed.
Azumi and Natsu had just a wonderful rivalry through this sort of period. Like, if you didn't watch Stardom back then, you are missing out, because Natsu was a fantastic comedy wrestler. This is peak Azumi, kind of calling everyone grandmas and leaning into she's young, everyone else is old gimmick. And Natsu was the perfect foil for that. Their exchange in this match isn't subtitled, unfortunately, but you do get some of their matches on Stardom World where, like, they've just gone like, we have to subtitle this. This is too good not to. Which I do wish we got a bit more, but I'm thankful when we get it. These two, they know each other so well, and they just play to each other's strengths.
So as I said, with Azumi being eliminated was the roar of the crowd as the realization that it was now time for Io Shirai to step up. And I think that really does play to the popularity and excitement that just surrounded Io Shirai at that time. Of course, Wonder of Stardom champion at the time.
Was the top champion because Tony was never really there.
Exactly. That's why she had the reign that she did. And that's why this was the main event of the anniversary show in a lot of ways. And you just feel like the intensity start up, but then Natsu goes to the comedic side of things, and she's like, "Oh, you know what? I don't think I want to wrestle Io Shirai. How many do you have? 3? That's not great."
And they did subtitle this part, which I was very thankful for.
Yes. How many do we have? 3? All right, that's enough. She lays down, and she's like, "All right, pin me. Get over this. I don't want to fight Io Shirai." And then does of course, tries to cradle her for a quick pin, and great near fall. Like, this is a legitimately great near fall, because on these, you can have like the 2 and it's like whatever, but Io kicks out, perfect timing, perfect reaction of like, oh my god. Which
Natsu would have had her if it wasn't for the fact she had to wrestle a match straight before. I believe that in my heart.
And this plays to the Io Shirai conversation that we were having earlier, where her ego perfectly played into this moment that she was like, "Oh, sure, you actually don't want to wrestle me. Of course you don't." And they'd have a great 4 minutes or so of back and forth, which I was really impressed by on rewatch, because you remember the big time match that Io and Kagetsu have in the middle of this, because it really it not only carries it, but it's like, if you were to take that aspect out of this match, that would be its own like top tier match in itself. But without that, you have Natsu, of course, working down Io and just trying. That's really what Natsu was in there for. Just trying to tire her. Listen, I'm not going to beat her, but I'll tire her down. I'll do my best. I'll do my best. And she did.
Chip damage.
Of course, she ultimately had to tap out, but very exciting couple of minutes there. Playing to the fact that Io's Io, as well as Natsu being Natsu.
Yeah, massive mismatch, and they played that off wonderfully. Natsu did her best. Like, when she hit the Bronco Buster, she threw herself into there. She didn't get to do the little combo at the end, because she just launched herself at Io. It was you knew what was coming here. But the beauty of these kind of matches, and you do get them in the elimination tags where there's over the top rope. Like, when Natsu rolled her up, you could have almost bought in maybe they're going for the joke elimination, get Io out, sort of change the momentum, so you can bite a little bit more on some of these falls, as opposed to if Io and Natsu just wrestled one-on-one, you know what's going on. Here, there's a little bit more up in the air.
Exactly. Now Kagetsu's up. Kagetsu and Io Shirai, as I was talking about. This was that world class wrestling that Stardom delivered, and I think this is part of the reason I love this match so much is that Io couldn't play to the formulaic style against one of the top dogs, right? Like, and as I also said earlier, Kagetsu and Freedom all worked so well together, and this was one of the clear cases of that, where you just see them mesh perfectly. You see on display what is the top of Stardom. Sure, they're not the World of Stardom champion, but who's the top of Stardom? It's these two in a lot of ways. And I think with how good Kagetsu is at this time, right? This is the top of the game. Kagetsu. Like, this is the best of the best. You just kind of see that take over this match. It's not the Io Shirai game anymore.
No.
You said this earlier. This is Kagetsu's match, and this was the stipulation that Kagetsu made after all. So it's only right that is the main middle of this match. Yes, we're gonna get to Momo and Tam later, and that's gonna be a crazy dramatic ending, closing minutes. But Kagetsu's got to get us there, and with this match, the Io Shirai, or this aspect, the excitement of Kagetsu hitting the mist, then eliminating Io Shirai with the choke slam onto the crowd of people. That is perfect, because you don't get to see Io Shirai get one up to lot back then. Doesn't happen. Kagetsu not only one up to Io Shirai, it was almost a dominant way of doing so with that choke slam out to the floor.
As dominating as an over-the-top rope elimination can be in these kind of matches, because they are often
this is why cheap, I like it in these.
Yeah, it can be a cheap way to get rid of a top star. But this wasn't you've slipped and you've fallen out kind of thing. This was Kagetsu just setting her up, and the mist ties into Oedo Tai kind of using the underhanded tactics, but the choke slam was definitive. And the slamming her onto the crowd, a lot of who were Queen's Quest members as well, is a nice little show of dominance to kind of announce that Oedo Tai maybe are in control here up until you hear who's next.
Yeah, so who's next, of course, ultimately is Viper. And Viper at this time was presented perfectly as like this dominant force on this team. I wouldn't say a monster, because that's not really how Stardom projects people, but she is a powerhouse. She's a dominant force, and she's going to be tough to get out, especially now that Kagetsu's coming off a 8-minute exhibition with Io Shirai, going 100 miles per hour, right? And that allows, and I think this was great showing by Viper for the next 10 minutes, and it plays, of course, like you said, to the game of how Kagetsu had to survive to help Oedo Tai just get to that point, because you get set back with that Chris Wolf elimination, but it's evened out because of the Herculean effort, the superhero effort, of Kagetsu with this 10-minute draw. This is as good as what we just saw in a lot of ways, because of the differences, the struggle that Kagetsu had wrestling against Viper. I loved every second of it, because there's that moment where, there's desperation now. Viper's going to eliminate Kagetsu, and Oedo Tai has to play Oedo Tai games and get pull Kagetsu out of the pin after, was it a power bomb?
It was a power bomb. Kagetsu jumped off the top rope, got counted into a power bomb.
Which was a great power bomb, by the way. Again, playing, and I didn't say it earlier, but there's a reason Kagetsu had to retire due to neck problems, which multiple times in this match I was like, all right, I get it. But that the drama, of course, of Oedo Tai's desperation, because they're starting to feel, if this happens, we're doomed, and that plays to what will ultimately be a draw, 10 minutes. That's the part of this match that I think plays so well, is each segment's 10 minutes. And Kagetsu getting to that was
this was all about survival for Kagetsu, because after wrestling Io Shirai for that kind of time, that she was done, and then to have to deal with Viper, a completely different wrestler who could just use the size and strength game to just take any energy Kagetsu had left. And the one thing I do like this segment. The one thing I think hurts it is the Oedo Tai tactics are good some of the time. Like when Kagetsu gets knocked out of the ring and they have to catch her and put her back up, and that happens twice. I love that. They're saving her from the pinfall. I like that. But when they kept running into the ring and like trying to double team Viper, the one thing I didn't like about that is you've just got Queen's Quest standing on the outside looking like nuppies. Like get in the ring and
that's a classic to this day, to be fair.
Yeah, but like I think in this situation was particularly frustrating because of the setup, and like I get why they did it. That was the one thing I wish they'd done a little bit better. But in terms of storytelling, it's done fantastically. And Kagetsu endures 10 minutes, knocks out not only Shirai but Viper, their two biggest weapons.
Viper looked like she was about to get the win as the time expired, which just furthered that. And then we're left to Hazuki and Hana Kimura, who have just this wonderful chemistry of beating the crap out of each other in every. It was from their early days to the very end. They were so great at this, and so you had that again. Amazing effort from Kagetsu. How could you follow that up? You just have these two, young up and comers go out there and try. It almost didn't even matter. Like the match didn't even matter to them in a lot of ways because that's what it felt like. It just felt like these two were rivals who wanted to destroy one another. And the end of this is terrifying for many reasons. Of course, which was a sunset flip power bomb to the outside off the turnbuckle. Hazuki hitting it to Hana Kimura. Hana Kimura crashing down to the floor. There was definitely scare there.
She got rocked.
Yeah, she was down. She huffing and puffing. Like she was there for a little bit because
it's quite scary when they set up for the next segment of this match, and like they're ready to go, and you just hear her sort of wheezing on the outside quite frantically, and even the camera kind of. I'm surprised they did actually. Camera comes out and pans to her, and you actually see Jungle there trying to comfort her because like you could tell instantly something wasn't quite right. But you weren't sure if it was just kind of shocked from the impact of it.
Sure.
But, thankfully, she was up and about for the final stanza after that. But it was
scary.
Yeah, I'm glad like I can rewatch this knowing that she was okay after it ultimately. But when I first watched it, it was very not confronting necessarily, but it is a scary moment for sure.
It was one of the. I know a lot of people have complaints about like when so many wrestlers are there to like take the falls that they do. This was one of those that I was like, this is why. This is why, because you don't want them. And I think some people don't notice like that the floors aren't completely matted like you see in professional wrestling here in the States, especially,
that
right?
Is nothing.
No, that mat then it was not a mat. It was just there for decoration. That's what that was.
I don't know why they bothered sometimes to pull it away to enhance the impact of a move on the outside. Like, you're not feeling that.
And I think this match also captured kind of how great they both were at such young ages and where they'd go on to be in their respective ways. I mean, we are still talking about how when Hazuki brings that, rage out of her, it's almost like no one's better at times. And as we know with what Hana Kimura will go on to do, she was so great at that. She brought out the best of everyone, and that's what they did here with each other.
It tied into each other's strengths. Like when Hana could go at someone and not have to worry too much about technique, but just go into raw brutality, that always favored her, especially in the Oedo Tai era for her. Same with Hazuki. Like this period in Oedo Tai, Hazuki, she was a very talented wrestler, but she was at her best when it was almost like forgetting the intricacies and just saying, I want to hit you as hard as I can. These two, you feel like they were backstage going, let's give each other hell. Because the Viper Kagetsu period was a slower stanza for this match. It was sort of that, it wasn't a dip in terms of quality, but just dip in terms of pace. And then these two come in and just switch it up to another gear, which is what makes this whole match so great because each period it feels different. It does different things.
Yeah, it was the perfect way to get to the final chapter because you want. I think having those two be fresh to go right, like doing the double draw, but two different ways of doing the draw. To have okay, now here's the drama. One of these two are leaving their group at the end, and watching this, I have such an appreciation for where Momo was already in her career back then. At the time of this match, she was 17.
Yeah. Hadn't graduated high school, as we hear
No,
in the post match.
yeah, and with Momo, it's like, and I say this all the time on other shows. It's like you don't realize how young she is because of all that she's accomplished, and obviously there were still some places she had to grow. I think now you and me agree that she's the best she's ever been because she has that character aspect to her now and that ego that I think Shirai had in some ways in the heelish ego, which funny enough she had to end up on Oedo Tai to get that.
She showed patches of it in Queen's Quest, especially in the middle of her white belt run.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why people remember that run so fondly for her character side, because it was when we got to see the best of Momo pre-Oedo Tai character-wise.
Exactly. And I think after that, it's when it obviously fell off. She was just a leader, and you watch her Tommy climb up and eventually Saya. But in this, you just realize like how special in-ring wise she is as a pro wrestler. And I said this on Twitter today. It's like Io Shirai at 18 years old is better than most wrestlers are ever. Like
Momo
ever.
18, you mean?
Momo. Sorry,
Yeah.
who did I say?
Yeah.
What did I say?
Io.
Well, I don't remember that off the top of my head. But I'm probably not far off there. But Momo, at 18 years old was better than so many. And you just kind of felt that in this, and how we talked about, Tam wasn't Tam back then. Tam was still very fresh, very new, very much trying to find her way in all of this. And
first match back from injury too,
yes.
So
and
she hadn't had a chance to build into it really in ring.
The one thing that Tam did have, though, was always that emotional side. That's the reason she lays into it now, even though she is a much more crafted wrestler. And it makes these final minutes the perfect amount of drama, with, just and to remind people, of course, this was Oedo Tai, this was Kagetsu's idea, not Queen's Quest. So it's just like, oh, are they gonna get one up here? And of course they did in the end, as everyone knows, where Momo will go on to lead Queen's Quests not too long after, with the Shirai eventually leaving in 2018. But tremendous stuff, and like you said, probably the first great moment of Tam Nakano's career.
Yeah, especially in ring, like her in Oedo Tai was a lot of fun. You got a lot of great little backstage things, but in terms of the in ring, you can see the elements are there for what Tam would become. Still a long way from perfecting it, because it did take her a few years to really get comfortable in the ring. So it is fun going back and watching this iteration of her, just trying to hang with Momo Watanabe. You can see the kicks aren't quite as strong or as crisp, but she's throwing everything she can, and that it works for the story that they're telling. Because if she was, peak Tam Nakano here, you wouldn't have the same drama. She's someone who's barely wrestled, coming back from injury in a situation she really didn't want to be in. And having to just fight and claw, just to hope to survive against someone who is leagues above her at this point in the ring. And that's, again, where the Oedo Tai, even though they were heels, you're sympathetic towards them, you're cheering for them, even when you know the result, because they play that kind of underdog role so well. They're just devious rogues in doing it.
Oedo Tai's heels is always so funny to me, because like they're only heels because they cheat, or they cheat to get ahead.
Yeah.
Any other reason, they are not heels. You want to cheer them because, like you said, they're underdogs. They're just trying to succeed, and unless Kagetsu doesn't need to, but everyone else, like that's the beauty of this group, is it's no one's perfect. Right, in that there's a reason Kagetsu's leading it, because you're leading, and I think that's the beauty of where Hana Kimura would go, Tokyo Cyber Squad. It's kind of the same thing, right? Is that you're leading a new group like that of not Tokyo Cyber Squad's more of like a misfit type thing because everyone's a little almost drastically different. Oedo Tai has a little more semblance to it, but it's perfect in that you connect with them. And with Tam Nakano losing here, Momo hitting the meteor off the top to get the win, which was picture perfect, and still one of my favorite things she does. Even though she doesn't lean on it as much as she did back then. For those who are wondering, she leaned down, and as much as I think Sasha Banks once upon a time did at times, but it's a good impactful move. And you get the emotional side of it. And Momo is in two ways. You're getting Tam now going to eventually go into the level where she grows into where she eventually becomes, where she eventually is now. And then you have Momo, who's rising up the ranks and getting prepared to be next Wonder of Stardom champion. So it's a perfect story from start to finish in this match.
And look, obviously, like it is kind of obvious, but you do really should stick around for the post-match stuff.
Yes.
Because even if you're not following through chronologically, so like what happens next might not be as high on the list of interest. There's so much character work here because you've got Shirai, commiserating with Tam, Kagetsu apologizing because it was Kagetsu's idea and let the team down. Offering a spot to Queen's Quest, going to Tam. Momo interferes because she's like, hey, I got something to say here. I want to challenge you for your belt. And in doing so, perhaps costs Queen's Quest getting Tam because Mayu's nowhere to be seen until after the second request. Yeah. So if Momo hadn't got in the way, Tam might not have had a choice. But then you got Mayu coming in, proclaiming there's only 3 factions, to which Jungle's like, oi. There is also Team Jungle, and then Mayu saying, if you're lonely, we'll bring Peace Armor, and then looking around, hang on, where is the little plush panda that Tam had around this time? Of course, Chris Wolf walked off with it, but yeah, it showcases everyone perfectly. It's emotional, but it's also funny and just encapsulates.
It's worth noting Iwatani didn't give Tam a chance to make a decision. She just took her.
No. Yeah. Literally kidnapped Tam at the end because Tam's like, I don't know which way I want to go yet. Yeah. I'm still recovering from the heartbreak of being kicked out of a faction I didn't want to leave. And then when both are offering, come with us, Maya's just like, too long you're with us, and steals her. And which again ties it, not that we're talking about this now, it ties in beautifully to Tam's story to the next part with Stars. She got dragged in by someone who was doting over her, and then over the years Mayu finds new toys to play with, which leads to Tam kind of feeling left out and wanting to go and form her own faction.
The never-ending career of Tam, always connected. But that was like nearly 40 minutes talking about the Gauntlet, so we can
sorry guys,
but everyone should,
there's so much there.
Everyone should go out of their way to check it out. Honestly, I mean, if you got to this point, you've already heard what we've had to say, but I hope that you watched it before listening. I think first view, I hope like you heard some of the beginning and you're like, oh, I need to check this out. Then I'll listen to the rest. That's what you did. But we'll move ahead here. Another World of Stardom title match. One of what I think is not only the best matches of Hazuki's career, but even Kagetsu's, who, Kagetsu has a very long list, of course, that we've hinted at we will be going to down the line, but it was Kagetsu, the World of Stardom champion, defending against, protege number 2 in Oedo Tai, Hazuki. This was at Edion Osaka Arena number 2.
Yes.
So a little different change up here. This was, as we talked about, one of the many, or I don't know, I forget if this was the year that they did 2 anniversary shows or not, but this was in Osaka. So. This was in Osaka, and this was, I think, as violent as you'd hope for when you kind of see these two names and you think of what Hazuki was, especially in 2019. I mean, that 2019 year for Hazuki, despite not getting a top title, is unreal. Like, this match, really kicked off her year, and I sing the praises of that match with Arisa later in the year to no end. But this is where she found her game. She found who she was, full form, and I think it's because of this match that you saw that confidence come out, and you do now.
Yeah.
When she's wrestling. Now when she's wrestling, you just see her as like one of the top stars, obviously, because that's who she is, and she doesn't need to be that's the one thing with Hazuki. She doesn't need to be a leader now because she's in control of herself. She doesn't, and that's the fun part about Hazuki, is she always feels like she's just kind of a rogue in stars nowadays. It's like, yeah, I mean, I tag with Koguma, sure, and I'll do all these things, but I'm still Hazuki. Like you think of Hazuki, you think of the Oedo tie, and I think that's the beauty of what she's turned her character into nowadays. But this match, without this match, she's not where she is now in terms of being a pro wrestler, and I think that's a lot of the respect needs to go to Hazuki and where they went here. It was like, all right, show me you're on this level. That's what this match was. It was a test for Hazuki, and she absolutely did.
And that's Kagetsu's entire reign, and really the last sort of year and a half, 2 years of Kagetsu's time in Stardom. Top champion, and basically waiting for someone to prove that they're ready to take on the mantle as Stardom's top performer. Whenever Kagetsu wrestled a championship match, it was a case of bring everything you have, try and beat me. When you fail, you need to go back and get better, get good. And Hazuki throws everything that she can at Kagetsu, gets close. Ultimately, Kagetsu wins because of the experience, the veteran savvy, pulls a couple of roguish tricks that Hazuki probably should have been prepared for, given that Hazuki knows Kagetsu better than anyone at this point. But it just speaks to the character that Kagetsu was playing around this time, and someone like Hazuki could really step up and match what Kagetsu wanted from her championship reign.
Yeah, and with this match, I think why I love this one so much is that you kind of felt the respect Kagetsu had for Hazuki from start to finish, especially with how the match closed with the was it Oedo coaster, Death Valley driver, and Kagetsu choking out Hazuki. I think that was like the perfect, like, you did a lot today. You showed me, but I am going to ultimately end this match in the most devastating way possible. And I think that was just like, for me, it adds like the perfect exclamation point to a match where Kagetsu is throwing Hazuki around the arena in a lot of ways, literally into a million chairs. That's what I was talking about earlier, when this went outside the ring as you would in world title matches, but it was different. It was different in a lot of ways with how Kagetsu attacked it.
No audience member was safe. I think everyone in the arena had to get out of their chairs at least once because they went through all four corners of the outside area. And it wasn't just, I'll throw you into a couple of rows. It was, I'm going to throw you like a bowling ball and see if I can get you to the very end of the rows. It was fantastic. And it played into their strengths as well, because this was just a beat down, brutal fight. You could tell like the friendship was there because they held nothing back. They weren't afraid to be a bit stiff, maybe leave a few bruises.
It's that freedom. It's that the stars thing that I talk about. That's what these two had. Like, we are going to go that extra mile against one another because we are that comfortable with one another.
Yeah. And look, it doesn't have the grandeur of a Kurikan Hall, but if you put this match in Kurikan Hall, I think people would people still consider this a really good match, but I think if you put it in Kurikan Hall, it'd be rated a lot higher than it actually is.
Yeah, I think with Hazuki, the beauty of what Hazuki does, and correct me if you don't feel the same, is that her style translates to the smallest of arenas to the biggest. And that's why I think she's one of the best house show workers nowadays, is because she doesn't, while yes, they will take days off in terms of not going to that 101%, her top percent still better or her house show percent is still better than the majority. And this is actually, in terms of singles matches, this is Hazuki's number 2 highest rated singles match. Which number 1 is the one that I love so much, which we will be talking about in a number of episodes. Wake, wake, nudge, nudge. But we'll get to that. It is interesting that her highest since coming back is the match with Julia from the 5-star, which I think is tremendous as well.
That's a worthy number. Yeah, that's a worthy best match since coming back, I think.
Yeah, and well, if we want to count I'm not going to count this one, but the Hanakamura Memorial tag is also up there. But that is the highest. And I love her title challenge against Utami as well. But I think that one with Julia is definitely deserving of being that top spot.
I think it leans into her style more, you know, because Julia loves someone like Hazuki, where you can throw everything, caution to the wind. So they work well with each other, and it is a feud I'm looking forward to seeing revisited many, many times.
Also, with this match, I think one of my takeaways, and I've watched many Kagetsu matches since, getting into Stardom, the kicks that Kagetsu has are among the elite. But when you see Kagetsu and you think of the career, you don't think the style is, like a Momo, right? Momo's kicks and Takumi Roha's kicks. You don't think of that with Kagetsu, but I put these kicks up against anyone. Like they're loud, they're impactful, but they're just part of the great repertoire that she has.
I mean, in many ways, you could argue Kagetsu is one of the greatest all-round wrestlers, because Kagetsu can do your brawling side
effect.
Yeah, it has the high-impact moves like the Death Valley Driver, can do 450 splashes, which I think when you look at someone like Kagetsu and the body shape, you're not expecting that kind of high-flying aerial athleticism, but nails it every time. And then, you've got the striking side of things, like and the submissions as well. Finishes with the submission, a brutal-looking submission. Really, like whatever you want, whatever you need from a Kagetsu can deliver and does deliver.
Yep, and I think this match, you see a lot of Kagetsu in Hazuki now in terms of just like that leadership mentality. It's kind of why I love seeing Hazuki in matches that don't involve Mayu, and this is let me explain, is that she gets to take on that Kagetsu role with the other Stars members, right? That you saw with the Oedo tie back then, because Mayu's obviously the leader, that's unquestioned, but Hazuki's, there to train, to teach, and that's why, they played off
to lead, because Mayu's
Mayu's busy. Mayu's busy. I wish we did do more faction stuff like that too. Like that is the fun of all this. But let's move on to our final match here.
Just one final thing. Like, obviously, like one of the reasons why I think we both wanted to feature this is because when people want to go back and watch the old Stardom, so often it's just like, go and watch the Kurikan Halls. That's where all the big stuff happens. But you do have to be careful, because if you only watch the Kurikan Halls, you miss a match like this. So obviously Kurikan's the best place to go, but keep your eye out on stuff like Cage Match or whatever for the odd match like this one that kind of pops out. And you've got to go and watch these ones.
Speaking of just not doing all Kurikans, the final match that we are featuring here today is from January 26, 2020, as Kagetsu's final match in Stardom against Momo Watanabe and Jungle Kyona, teaming with Mayu Iwatani. This is, and for me, it's like, this is like, I've seen people toss this around. This is like that type of comfort match, if that makes sense, right? Like, it's one that you can go and watch at any time, and it never gets old.
No.
Two, I feel like you almost notice something different every time. Right, it's like for people that have like comfort moves or whatever, and you rewatch them. This is that type of match, because not only is it a feel good type match, and you have just this wonderful ceremony at the end where everyone celebrates and so on and so forth, but you have the beginning where Mayu and Kagetsu are matching, and they have the mask, and like that brings the biggest smile to my face. Also, some of my favorite Mayu Iwatani gear ever.
Oh
It was
yeah.
a one-timer gear, unfortunately, so we'll never get it again. But she's matching Kagetsu with the baggy pants, and that's the funny thing they play off. It was like, should I, this is one time, but do I look good? Yeah, I think I look good. And but the match is it's not as comedic as you think it is, based off of how the pre and post now Kagetsu's career is, and that's the beauty of it. It's like when it gets down to the action, it's just a fantastic tag team match between four of the best. Yes, see, I gave Jungle Kyona her credit. And this, honestly, and when this match ended, I was like, this might be Jungle's biggest win. Like, truthfully, like in terms of meaning, like, because I think this means as much to her probably as any world title or wonder, because she pinned Kagetsu and Kagetsu's last Stardom match. So that's meaningful.
Oh, absolutely. And like the fact that she got picked for that spot, not only to be in the match, but to get the victory. Because you could have very easily given it to Momo Watanabe, you could have given it to, even Hana Kimura could have got in that last match kind of opportunity, and it would have made sense. It would have worked. But, Kagetsu picked both of them for a reason. And you could tell how much it meant to them and how much fun they were having out there. Yes, it's not a comedic match, but there's just enough comedy, be it intentional or unintentional, that just makes this so magical. It's not pure comedy. You get good, great wrestling as well, but it's just all mixed together, which makes it such a good comfort watch, because it's not as serious, it's not as intense, it's not as dramatic as the previous three matches we've talked about. It is a bit more lighthearted, but it's not at the sacrifice of the quality of the in-ring product.
Yeah, I think with the four matches we pick, you get a little bit of everything. In terms of like the ultimate seriousness of like that Gauntlet and where that goes, but which also involves some comedy itself. Two world title matches, and then this that brings it all together, of kind of that emotional and the family side of what Stardom has.
Yeah.
You don't get to see it as much nowadays, but you can feel it with Stardom rosters, is that when they get to spend a lot of time together, they are families, and you see that in their promos and the way they talk about each other, right? It's like, I think people, they thought there was a shift when, say, DDM joined, and I think that the funny part is about DDM is like they're the one that makes it seem like a family more than anyone else nowadays.
Oh yeah, you
The
can see it
Stardom
in all of
roster, not just DDM.
Yeah, you can see it in all of the outside the ring content.
Yes.
Like even at the award show that just happened recently, when Tam went up and received her awards, Julia's the one sort of bawling her eyes out because of how much the family aspect is. Yes, they're rivals in the ring, but that's what makes them so close outside of the ring.
Yeah, and this match, I love seeing Jungle and Momo together, because they weren't together at their prime, but they were so good in this one like opportunity to see them. And I was thinking about this when we talk about how hard of a year 2020 was for them, and Kagetsu retiring, Risa retiring, Hana's passing, and I think we a lot of us focus on those three because they were all bang 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 bang. But losing Jungle Kyona is gigantic in its own respect, and of course hers was different because it was an injury, it wasn't a retirement. It was very different, so I think that's why she doesn't get lumped in, but ultimately she never came back, and she was gone and from Stardom, and she only just really came back recently, and even then it's like she's on her last chapter, really.
I thought you were going to say last legs, and I was going to say dude, phrasing.
No, I was not going to say that. Even though she did get a big win, which was very nice at the
arguably her biggest win happened just a few nights ago.
Yeah, biggest win in terms of like the stage, but I do think like in terms of the appreciation that she may have, this was it. And I think the way her and Kagetsu closed the match was excellent. Like it brought it all together, because it's like, oh, in the end, this is still a match. This is still a meaningful match, a moment, and hitting again Kagetsu's neck. Like there was so many times where this was like, we're almost there. Like really, we're almost there. This is the reason retirement's happening. And Jungle made sure to end it with
You're not coming back. Ganzo
no.
bomb, power bomb, jungle
Oh,
buster, like that
and those power
trifecta.
bombs were they were so great. And Mayu had a great save at one point to keep the match going on one
Mm.
of the power bombs. And I was like, I think at that point Kagetsu would have been pretty okay if you just let the match end. Because I
I'm
think
done.
Jungle did such a great job, and I think Kagetsu did just as good a job of making all of that feel impactful. It's a shame that we didn't get Jungle to elevate after that, because more so than anything, injuries did
Yeah,
ruin
and
any
and just the
shot of that.
timing, because
Yeah,
like the next week she was meant to be facing Mayu Iwatani for the red belt in Nagoya, and look, it's in Nagoya. She was losing the match, like that's the rules.
yeah, she
But
wasn't
like
winning.
that was going to be a big moment, and coming in with the refreshment of the roster with the like someone like Kagetsu leaving, Jungle was going to not necessarily be winning top championships, but was going to have an important role as that gatekeeper and bringing people to the next level, which ultimately we never really got to see come to fruition.
Yeah,
But also, Jungle and Kagetsu just had fantastic chemistry in this match. They had a red belt match just before the Kagetsu Hazuki match. Whenever they fought in the 5-star Grand Prix, they were always just perfect. Like, obviously, both of these wrestlers they have great matches with just about anyone, but their chemistry together isn't necessarily spoken of as much because Jungle isn't the highlight wrestler of a Mayu or an Io Shirai.
yeah.
But I'll always
Even
support her.
I think the interesting thing with Jungle, and of course Jungle will be brought up in many episodes in the future. She'll have her own.
As long as I have a say in it.
She'll have her own batch, because as me and Trent have talked about off air, we know she's closer to retirement than she is to the start of her career. So I think that's when we'll really give her the main focus, respectfully. But this was like, for me, it was the ultimate point, and this was this match was supposed to be about not about Jungle, but about Kagetsu.
Yeah.
But it almost did feel like it was about Jungle too, because it was validation in a lot of ways. Like Kagetsu, Kagetsu had Jungle pin her on the final one, and I think that's very nice. And just to think about, and you want to watch the full match, you want to watch the pre-match, you want to watch every moment from this video, because it all makes it better. I think the post match is absolutely wonderful. You have Kagetsu on the mic talking about, it's my last match. I should be sad, but I am filled with joy. And I think that really captures where Kagetsu, or who Kagetsu was as a entertainer overall, is that no matter what, it was always about giving the best show. And on the final match here, it was perfect.
Yeah, and you could see how much love the roster had for Kagetsu. And I think this was really important because it was around this time there were reports that the reason Kagetsu was leaving was because she wasn't liked backstage as a trainer and thought worked him too hard. And look, not that we're in a position to know the truth, because we're not. But you look at how this entire retirement month and a half played out, and the outpouring of love and care towards Kagetsu. There might have been one or two people who didn't like Kagetsu's training style, but they were hard to find amongst the people that was in the ring at the end there.
Yeah, this is a big, gigantic family. This wasn't like, I don't really believe much of the this is why Kagetsu's retiring. I think that neck was done in a lot of
Kagetsu was
ways.
retiring years ago. Io Shirai talked
exactly.
Kagetsu into sticking around. That is forgotten so much.
It is.
Yeah, the neck was screwed back then, and then taking all the moves that they did.
And I think for a lot of people, if you didn't get the completion of Kagetsu's career with the retirement tour and the produce show, then you got it in a whole different way, of course, at Matinee, which was, just obviously that's never something anyone wanted to happen, but I'm forever grateful that Yoshino, Kagetsu was willing to come out of retirement after over a year off and show up, and not only show up, but be every bit of Kagetsu that was there a year ago in prime territory.
Oh yeah, and didn't look like Kagetsu had missed a moment in the ring. Like her and Hazuki just came in and was like, yeah, no, we've been gone for a year, but you wouldn't know it. And then obviously a year later, officially Ueshino by this point came out for Vargas, and wasn't wrestling, but obviously still such an important part of the Hana Kimura Memorial experience because of how close Yu was to Hana Kimura and Kyoko Kimura. Yeah, because Yu was there with Kyoko when Edo was really coming into its own, and then took it over and turned it into the beast that it was and is today.
And with Ueshino, he's involved still, like not involved still, like he works his real life job and blah blah blah, blah but flowers are backstage oftentimes at these shows for certain wrestlers from Ueshino, and it's always wonderful. Like I forget how long ago, but there was pictures of Hazuki and Ueshino together, and Yoshino's moved on to whole new life and working a normal life, not a pro wrestler.
Arguably doing better things than he was as a wrestler.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But never out, never, and that's the beauty of it. And when we get those moments, whether it's the littlest thing of a picture with Hazuki or Natsu or something like that, it's great. It's great. It's why
it's the house that you built in many ways. Yeah.
Yes, and the flower things, those are things we don't always get to see, but we know, with certain wrestlers, Ueshino has sent, we have seen them. And really, this wasn't the Ueshino episode, this was the anniversary matches, but in the end, it ended up being about Kagetsu Yoshino in a lot of ways. Well, we close with that retirement match, but definitely go check that out, please. Yes. That is essential viewing. Because of just really, you get a little bit of everything. You get, Mayu and Kagetsu teaming up, which is, special in itself.
We've wanted that for so long.
Exactly, because, and one of the great lines that I think resonates with us now, right, is Mayu's ready to lead Stardom into another level. That's what Kagetsu says. And it's like, we're sitting here in 2023, we're like, huh, could Kagetsu have been more right? Like, obviously, it wasn't just Mayu Iwatani, but who was the world champion when they needed it the most? It was Mayu at the time. And now we're here in 2023. They're the number 2 promotion in Japan. And it's because of what, Kagetsu did, what Mayu did together in matches. It's because of Io Shirai that we talked about. It's because of KAIRI Hojo that we talked about. It's because of so many of the talents we talked about. I think that's my favorite part of doing these match shows, or it from the years, is because you kind of see, oh, this is why we're here. This is why this has gotten to the level, and that's awesome.
It is, and it's fun just going back, and I've said it before on this show, like when you're going through different eras of Stardom, just seeing how things change and the focal points and what works and what really gets highlighted in a Stardom big match situation, and you get that sort of mixed through over the years, and obviously the different matches, different setups, but you get to see so much of that Stardom growth, even if it's something as simple as Momo Watanabe in the Gauntlet match versus Momo Watanabe in the Kagetsu retirement match. You see the same Momo, but so much growth, so much progression. It's become, by this point, Momo is one of the best wrestlers in the world. Maybe not in terms of position with the company, but you put her in a match, she's going to deliver a banger.
Yeah. I mean, as by the time this comes out, I don't know, some people might listen to this, months down the road. Because that's what these shows are for. But Momo's
time sensitive.
Momo's about to wrestle Saya Kamitani in a match that's so meaningful in a lot of ways to the history that we're talking about here, and it's like, it's going to deliver because that's what Momo Watanabe does. Like,
Yeah.
at minimum, it's going to be very good. and with what
yeah.
Saya has done, it's like, all right, this is going to be great. And I think that's, we talked about Jungle a lot, talked about Kagetsu a lot, but I do like that you brought up Momo. I think the only thing we didn't check here on this show today, in terms of like matches that really emphasize Stardom then, now, and going forward, is that we didn't have a great Wonder match to go over, which is a very different. But good news for everybody is that we'll have plenty to talk about soon enough. This was my wonderful transition. I was really excited about that one. That was not
You're
actually
wonderful.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Is that after we've completed these 2 anniversary shows, which is wonderful, but the next 3 episodes, this is why I started Stardom Road, or in my head originally, and then I presented to Trent like, hey, let's go through Stardom's history and watch some cool matches, and Trent went on of like how it's easy to just make life, oh, I have to go watch great Stardom matches, sure. Little does he know, well, he does know now, obviously, is that when I
had a fair idea.
When I was thinking of this idea, the whole reason for me was to go through the career of Arisa Hoshiki in a series of shows, episodes, and while we are going to be going through her career many other times because of certain events and whatnot, this is our chance to really just focus on Arisa Hoshiki with a 3-show series, our first all wrestler series. We talked about Yuzuki Akawa, of course, to really kick this off, but this is something that will really guide the show. We have 2 series of wrestlers set up, and we're starting with Arisa Hoshiki here, who, of course, one of my favorites of all time. It probably goes Mayu Iwatani at 1 and the 151 matches of Arisa Hoshiki at 2. But if there was anyone born to be a professional wrestler and be a great professional wrestler and born with the talent to do so, it was Arisa Hoshiki. So I am very excited.
Yeah, so we're dedicating the next 3 episodes to her. We want to give like a full rundown of what made Arisa. So you'll get the first stint, you'll get the second stint, and then you're going to get just basically kind of what this episode was, but just dedicated to Arisa Hoshiki. The best match is what you need to go to see if you want to get a visual for just how great Arisa was. This kind of wrestler retrospectives that we're going to be doing, starting with Arisa, I think we can both agree is probably going to be the backbone of Stardom Road in a lot of ways, because there are so many incredible talents and names that have walked through the doors of Stardom that we want to highlight. And especially if you joined sort of during the Bushi Road era, you haven't necessarily had a chance to see. And so we hope that if you're coming through, you're not used to these names, that this will inspire you to go back and look and see how great Stardom was. And if you are experienced with Stardom pre-Bushi Road, if you're like us, you've walked the Stardom Road for years now, hopefully this gives you the same excuse that we have to go back and just love what has been produced. And yes, there's only 151 matches from Arisa Hoshiki, but what 151 matches there are. So much to love from it. And as you said, a born wrestler, a born entertainer, not just in pro wrestling. And we're both looking forward to it.
I like to say, and this is why I kind of get sad now when I talk about Arisa, is that she is like the most talented person I've ever seen. Like anything she did, she didn't just do it. She did it at the highest level of like talent wise. Maybe, her singing career didn't get to like all-timer points, but she was a great singer. She was a great wrestler, obviously, which is where we'll be hitting. But there's just so many exciting moments, matches that we're going to jump into that I'm so excited about. Maybe the show could just end after the 3. I'm just kidding because I think there's so many others we want to explore. And that's why we love the show. So hopefully you do tune in for that one. 3. Beginning with, a little career overview and then her initial run with the company, which I don't know. The fun thing is I don't think everyone knows about that first run and what she was doing then. And, we've touched on it already. We did our debut match and Kind of how Rossi pegged her and his blog is like the shining star, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, of the initial rookie crew. And like, she's still very young then, but she'd go on to be great. And that's why she walked back in the door one day and she did become great. So I'm very excited to jump into that next time. But this was the anniversary matches edition for Stardom, and I'm sure next time around we'll have some other sort of matches for, I don't know, there's some big huge mega event coming up in April that we may be able to find something to discuss.
Yes.
Kind of around that idea. But this is what will bring us into it. And there's also a certain Cinderella tournament coming up as well, which that you want to talk about staples for Stardom. I think for a lot of people now it's the 5-star, but if you are a longtime Stardom fan, it's that Cinderella tournament. That was the true staple. So looking forward to all that. So please keep listening here. Trent, anything to plug before we wrap this up?
Yes, so basically by the time this episode comes out, either there'll be a new article on Natsupoi over on WrestleIn either on Friday or Monday. Haven't determined the specific time yet, but I'm excited to get that one out, sort of covering the departure from DDM and the TAM rivalry. So keep your eyes open for that. We also have an Ocean Cyclone show episode coming out in not this weekend, but next weekend. So if you like the sound of our voices, you've got plenty more coming your way.
And if you don't, but you like the sound of Ryan's, you should definitely still listen to it. And also, thank you for listening to this full episode too. Follow me at Scotty Wrestling on Twitter if you don't do that already. In terms of plugs, I have interviews coming out. I don't know the dates yet. I'm not going to say one of them just in case it doesn't happen, but I do have 2 interviews in the bank. One with TJPW's Jury Nagano, which was very exciting to do because of her uniqueness, of course, to the sport of pro wrestling and TJPW itself. And while the answers are very short, they're very impactful. A special interview with one of my most highly hoped for interviewees, Arisa Sarah. So make sure to keep an eye out on that. I'll have previews. Me and Trent will have reviews up in multiple fashions for that February 4th show. So definitely keep an eye out for those as well, because our next time out will be on February 7th. So I want to just make sure we get all those plugs in. Trent's review will be on Monthly Puroresu. Of course, mine will be on 5-star. Joshi show. I don't know if I'm going to write one yet. I never know. It's just a matter of if someone.
See if you get inspired.
It's sometimes if Alex doesn't want to do it, and he's like, "Can you do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." For that show, I think I will be doing it because he's like, it's a great show, but I think he's going away or something. I was like, "Oh, you want me to review the show with Saya and Momo and Julia Suzuki?" Sure. Don't mind if I do. But make sure to check out all that. We cover Stardom on a good amount. I won't say weekly basis, but enough monthly basis for sure. So definitely check out for that as well. Thank you for listening, everybody. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already to the Stardom Road podcast so you never miss an episode. Because with the bi-weekly schedule, it's easy to forget. I know I do.
We forget.
I know I do as someone that records the episodes. So please make sure to do that. And thank you for listening. We'll be back next time with the Arisa Hoshiki 3-part series. See ya.
So, Curtis.
Yeah, man.
Canart said we've got to do an ad. I've never done one before. What should we do?
I have no idea, bro. I ever made an ad before. What are we doing an ad for?
I don't know. We just say we're like a New Japan Pro Wrestling podcast, and we just put a bunch of clips like here.
Arguably the most shredded guy. So if you really want to get there too.
Maybe a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Heard that here. Michael Richards calling Jay White small compared to him. Here.
I love it. This picture you've painted for me. I want to hang it up. I want to frame it and hang it up in my bedroom.
Yeah.
We don't have a WWE tryout or a New Japan tryout every second week. And now I'm in Bullet Club.
And here?
Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega. Do you want to just go off about this match?
How do you take or talk about one of, I think, probably the best matches you've ever seen? That's an ad, right?
Yeah, that works. That's brilliant because then all our work's already been done for us and we don't have to do anything.
Aha, past us did it. Present us living in the now.
Look at us.
Look
Look
at
at
that.
us being friggin' brilliant.
Mate, minimum effort, maximum output. Okada Shorts podcast. Check it out on the Count Out Network at Okada Shorts. Rate and subscribe, listen or die.
This has been a Count Out Podcast.